It's Tuesday, and you know what that means. Previously on Worlds Asunder.
I think I'm probably 2, maybe 3 connections away.
Yeah, so you're closer. Not a surprise though.
Yeah.
Well, next time I visit LA, I'm gonna call James and be like, "Hey, I need you to set a meetup with this person so I can find this person so I can meet."
So I can meet Kevin Bacon. Yeah.
Welcome to the breakdown of Worlds Asunder, where we go completely away from the script. The stories we've read capture our attention and immerse our minds in settings of all kinds to bring us the spectrum of feelings and deliver the tale of tales to our starving psyches.
Whether it's medieval-style fantasy with mages and knights,
Or hard sci-fi takes on the future of space colonization.
or thrillers set in your backyard, world building is the foundation that holds up the narrative, the glue that keeps it from unraveling as readers follow the journey you laid out for them, all to make the stories jump from the pages and burn themselves into our memories.
Welcome, weary writers, to Book Career in a Year's network of podcasts. This is Worlds Asunder, an insightful podcast on world and character building.
My co-host is the one and only David Shadoin, better known as Shady. It's not just a descriptor, it's also his moniker.
And she's the H.Y. Gregor, but you can call her Haley or Sour Patch, your friendly post-apocalyptic wasteland elf.
We know. We have nearly a score of published novels and short stories between us, but who the hell are we to teach you about world building and character development? We get it, which is why we decided to call in some favors.
Each week, we pull from a list of the best and brightest authors, editors, and publishers to give tips and guidance on tackling the age-old questions and provide you with tools on how to accomplish world building like the pros. From environment to magic to characters, how do we strike a balance between what matters to our audiences and what matters to keep it all straight? Open up your ear holes
And your minds.
and get ready for us to tear Worlds Asunder.
So, if you're ready.
Just knock and enter. Speaking of scripts, just you've touched on it a bit, but would you mind summarizing for our audience how did your film experiences change the way you approach writing novels compared to maybe like some of our other contemporaries who you've gotten to know, and what skills or viewpoints would you tell growing authors from the film industry that might help them better in their writing process?
So I try to stay very character based, I think. And that's one of the things that's like cinema has taught me, is that audiences connect more to character than they do plot, right? Like we love our characters. The plot of the show Firefly is extremely simple, but it's the characters that we love. I mean, they feel like our best friends. So, and I think that's one of the things that film and TV does really well. They allow you to connect, to develop that empathetic connection really quickly with characters. And a lot of stuff is very character based. So I've really pulled that into my writing. Like my books are extremely character based. I mean, it is character drama. It is Game of Thrones level drama, but in space, right? So, and some readers love that, and some readers hate it. Some readers just want some explosions and like some cool fighting, and they want the descriptions of that. And so I try to balance it as best I can. But really, I think that from the film standpoint, I really lean heavily on my characters to tell the story. I don't know if I would advise that, but I have found that the readers who like it love it.
And there are plenty of people who are catching on to that particular writing, the character versus world driven narratives, right? And you're not wrong, especially because you came out of the film industry where people are very much attached to characters. Like you said, there are plenty of classics, films, TV series, whatever. They are very character driven. If you actually break down their plot, they're very simple. You know,
Well, and you
the
could
world
change
doesn't
world
drive them.
details or plot details in a story, or in a show, like a TV show. But if you change an actor and that actor is like far afield, people lose their minds. Like the character is so different now. So I think that that's indicative too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're good. No, it's a good point of reference. But so when you do write your Game of Thrones more world driven, where the characters are just kind of reacting to everything, because there is a bit of reality to that, right? Like sometimes that's all we can do is react to the world around us. How do you plot your characters versus your worlds and where they intersect? And do you change that out a little bit in each story, or do you try and keep it like the characters in more control if you're doing character driven, or the world in more control if you're doing world driven?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a give and take. I think there's a balance to be struck there, because I think that there are some problems that are unique to being world problems and other problems that are unique to being character problems. And one of my favorite things to do is have a world problem happening at the same time as a character problem, or hopefully like inter-character problems, right? Because then it's a really complex, messy situation. And I think that's what we as humans really, I think that's where we have empathy for, is because like most of our lives are a hot mess, you know, like there's always like something going on that we don't like. I mean, how long do I have? I can get into some stuff that's going on in my life that is just nutty.
We will go for forever. Like we'll talk to you for forever, man.
So
yeah, we got issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody does, right? So it's like when a character is too clean or a situation's too easy, you know, when it's not complicated, we don't get it. Like, in fact, I watch stuff a lot of times where that's where we get the like, I don't believe the character, right? The character's unbelievable because it's like, oh, boo-hoo, they had one problem. Okay. You know, take a step in my life, homeboy. Like, I know you're trying to defuse a bomb, but you don't have kids screaming at you, you know, like the IRS on the phone with you, like yelling at you about your taxes while you're trying to make it. Come on, man. You know, like it's like our lives are messy. I think that we as humans like have a propensity to kind of create a lot of our own drama. So, you know, I try to bring that in with the characters as well, where they're just kind of screwing stuff up, you know, and I like to create those moments where a reader goes, oh man, why'd you say that? Because that connects us, right? Because that's the kind of stuff we say that we shouldn't, right? So I think the more that you can, I mean, obviously you can't overwhelm people, you know, like the characters can't be so relatable. They're like, oh my God, I'm starting to kind of, you know, I came here for escape, but this character's too real and I'm feeling it, right? You know, like I think Malcolm Reynolds in Firefly is a very good example of that, right? He is a flawed character and he makes mistakes all the time, in particular with Inara, you know, where he says stupid stuff and you're like, bro, why'd you say that? What's wrong? Don't apologize, you know? And so that's why we love him, is because he's us on the screen. It's just he wins most of the time, and a lot of times we don't. And I think that's one of the things that fundamentally attracts us to cinematic stories, whether they be novels or TV, is that it gives us hope that like we're going to be able to figure out our stuff, and somebody's going to help us, and it's going to be okay, right?
And that is why we are willing to go and sit in a coffee shop and feel like garbage 5 hours later and cry, is because those kinds of connections are what we're trying to build.
Right. It's that catharsis that's kind of like, you know, it's a tangential catharsis. Like it's not our real catharsis. It's, you know, they're going through the same hardships I am, but they made it through and they're happy. I can be happy too. Probably not, but I'm going to tell myself that we can, you know.
And it's emotional
so
for us
emphatic on
too.
that you lost your earpiece.
I'm so emphatic on it. Yeah.
Jeez.
There's the meme about the authors that are, you know, sitting at the keyboard laughing maniacally while they kill a character. And in my experience, most of the time, the authors that I know have to kill a character, they will message me and be like, I am crying because I just had to edit the scene where I killed my character and I'm not okay. Talk me down.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I did. The character I killed, I cried. I was like, and you know what made me sad about it? The thing that actually made me sad about it was that was the last time I was going to get to write that character. Right? I felt like I was losing a friend. It wasn't that the writing itself was so emotional. It was just like, oh man, like I'm going to have to like spin up a prequel story in order to write this character again. Like this is done. This is the last words that I get to, you know, I get to write for them. And that made me sad.
And it's not just killing a character though, too. It's the emotional resonance of the whole thing, where it's like writing Companion to Ghost. I had to really dig deep into some dark places to make our main character, who make him really feel the things, and to try and dig in a way that find those feelings and find a way to convey them in writing to the readers, so like exactly how that pain feels. And one of the best compliments I got was from a retired vet who was like, "Oh, you really hit PTSD on the head." And I'm like, dude, I appreciate that so much. And it's one of those things where like it feels like a backhanded compliment, but it's a perfectly good compliment, right? It's like you found a way to delve dark enough that realism hit. And I think a lot of us strive to do that. And to be honest, James, I think you got a leg up on us because you get to do it every day when it comes to bringing out those emotions in actors. And we're just sitting there behind a computer screen hoping that we get it right.
Yeah. Well, I tell everybody, like I lie for a living, right? Like I'm a professional liar. I manipulate people on set to do what I want. And there are times where it's really hard. It's really like kind of a painful experience. And I try to do it from a place of like empathy, where it's like I'm going through it with them. Right. So, it's emotionally taxing. And I don't know. I think it probably is an advantage a little bit to like kind of know the ways in which you use the tools in which to manipulate an actor. I would use to manipulate a reader within the given context. But I also think that it's just a matter of like interacting with people and being observant and like trying to like understand why people feel the way they feel. I tell people all the time that like I don't really care what you do. What I care about is why you do it. Like yeah, you hurt me. That's fine. I want to know why you thought it was okay. I want to know why you did it. Like that's what's important to me, not that you said something mean, right? What the why is most important. So I think that as long as people are asking those questions of like, why is a character doing what they're doing? Like, yeah, okay, they punched their brother in the face, right? Like, okay, that's cool. Why? Their brother said something that made them mad. Why did it make them mad? What history do they have out of context that made them mad enough to do that? Right? Like, I think this is especially true for bad guys, because otherwise you wind up with like Scooby-Doo villains, right? Like, like, okay, you're like they're a sociopath. It's okay, but they still have to have motivation to do something, right? They're just like, oh, I'm going to blow up the world, including myself. What? Okay, why? Like, what possible reason do they have to do that? Yeah.
I mean, that makes me think of Sherlock, the BBC.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, they delved into a little bit of that. Yeah, they delved into a little bit of that, like, mental illness driven, but they were like, it's not just enough to be mentally ill. Like, there is a reason why they're targeting these particular people. Now, it might be ego, but it's still a reason.
Sure. Well, and even if it's ego, there's still a reason behind that ego, right? Like, I mean, I think a lot of times that people who are like, ego driven are they're hung up on something from their past, right? That they're like compensating for, or that they're troubled by, or that gave them some kind of false sense of confidence, or maybe even a true sense of confidence. But like, you gotta dig. You gotta dig down. You gotta find out why. Like, I hate to use the film language of like, find the motivation, but like legit, find the motivation. Like, they can't just do something because it's beneficial to your story. There needs to be a why, and then that why needs to exist throughout the rest of the story. I hate it when characters do something that's so completely random. And you're like, oh, this character would never do that. I don't understand. We just spent 30 chapters determining that this character was this way, and then suddenly they just do this. What the heck, right? And I think that's where and you're trying for growth, right? Oh, they did something different. It's like, okay, but yeah, it should be a gradual thing. Like there should be a reason why they are now doing it this way.
Haley, you had something?
I was going to make a joke about writers becoming armchair psychologists, but
yeah,
I mean, it's
for sure. I mean, you should a little bit.
And James did it twice because he did both screenwriting and writing. So,
I think that's helpful, though. I mean, they have whole books. The Emotional Thesaurus. There's a whole series of them that can be a really good reference point. I own, one of them, but it breaks down a bunch of different traumas that characters could have gone through. And so it has like them in a list, and then you can go through and it can list like what kinds of things could cause that kind of trauma, and then the common responses, things that people like shut down, or the things that they act out doing in response to them. And there's a whole series of books. If you look up the Emotional Thesaurus, I think it'll bring it up. And getting into that kind of character motivation is, I think, hugely important. So I love it.
Yeah, I agree.
So you've touched on it a bit in each of your answers, but what are the primary differences when it comes to film versus a novel angle on world building? Like when you're discussing the descriptions, the visual versus the audio cues, like where do you find differences between the two, or where do you find similarities?
I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities, at least with the way I do it. Probably because I'm world building for film, and then just adapting it. But the big thing is, I think I do more. Well, it's different, right? Because with screenwriting, like I'm developing the script and I'm giving it to a team, and then the team is like doing a bunch of the different things, right? Like a production designer is going to design the spaceships. When I'm doing a novel, it's like I want to develop what it looks like so that when I go to describe it, I can actually visualize it and like give some descriptions to it. So it's like I become the team for everything. And I because I'm used to that from the film world, I still do that on the novel side. So I guess that's a similarity and a difference. It's like a different approach to how I do it. And, being a director, like I obviously have like input or whatever, but I'm working with somebody who's helping me do the work, or who's doing the work and I'm helping, rather, not doing it myself. Like I was working on a Soul Saga, and I really wanted to know what the fighter craft was going to look like, right? So I jumped in Mid-Journey and started iterating spaceships, and I like look it up, and then I'd like go. I had a whole list of like things that like the science had told me space fighters would have to look like, and so I was trying to like integrate that as much as I could, and obviously it was a hot mess to begin with, but as I like developed and refined, I finally started seeing things that looked like what I kind of pictured would be in my head. And that allowed me to really kind of go into like intimate detail in how it looked, how it works, how it attaches to the outside of the carrier ship, like how the cockpit works. And those are all little bit of like things that I can like do to either like confound or support a character in a scene, right? Like if the stupid barrier between them and their retractable cockpit is glitchy, or like it built janky or whatever, it's like they could be fussing with that and they're pissed off anyway. And it's just like one more little pebble that I can throw at them that we all relate to, where you're like upset and you're trying to do the thing and like it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And it's got one job, and you're just like, that's it. I'm done. I'm flipping a desk. I'm, and those are moments I feel like as readers, like we're like, oh my God, bro, I get you. Like I've been there so many times. Screw Keurig coffee makers. They never work,
The printer in Office Space.
Yeah, exactly.
Keurig, don't worry. I won't ask you to sponsor this episode.
I love my Keurig. So like, please, it's just the first thing I thought of.
And don't tell them I just switched to Ninja. So, there's, but I still use their K-Cups, so I can't complain. So then are there any aspects in either format, screenwriting or books, that gets lost? Like, is there subtext or theme lost in the format since you've kind of seen both sides of it now, where you worked with a team or you had to work independently, but you lose some of the kind of like the benefits of the other?
I mean, the one that I like struggle with is like internal monologue, right? Like in novels, like you can get into a character's head and actually you like be saying one thing but feeling another thing, and you don't get that benefit unless you're using voiceover, which I think is a little bit of a crutch, but like, you don't get that. Like the actor has to know that subtext and they have to like show it, which can be hard in some situations, right? So you lose that internal monologue, you lose that access as like a, divine entity, like sharing thoughts with a character. So, I think that novels have a bit of an advantage over visual mediums because of that. We can connect a little bit more deeply with characters because we get to hear their thoughts. Sometimes, not all formats, but that's the thing that I miss. Now having like written novels, and I use internal monologue pretty sparingly, but like having that option, I've like written scripts and like gone to italics and been like, oh, I can't film what they're thinking, right? Shoot, how am I going to do that? And I got to sit here and kind of think about it. Like what can I do to clue in the audience that they're not happy about this decision, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, there is definitely a lot of subtext to inner monologue for sure. And I'm going to tie this in a little bit because you had mentioned when you write, you watch the film of it in your mind, right?
Yeah.
I am very much that same way. I know like some authors will say like the character speaks to them and then they got voices in their head and that's how they write. I very much like I write, especially action-based scenes. I write how I visualize it, where I can just like I can see it step for step, and then I go, how would I describe that? And I describe it, and then if I don't like it because it makes me think of something else, then I'll change it to match whatever it was that I had in my head previously.
Yep.
So you have all of that. Is there anything that gets lost going the other way? So you kind of did it in reverse, but when you finally wrote the book for Soul Saga Revolution, or really wrote the series for Soul Saga, did you lose? Was there anything that like now that you're looking at the series, the TV series, that you're going to lose from the books? Or
I mean, I don't. It's hard to
you
say.
said the inner monologue. I meant the other way around.
Yeah.
That you lost when you went back to write the books.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think for the most part, it was an expansive process. Like I got to really kind of like do a lot more with it. There was some dramatic pacing that I lost for sure because like events just they couldn't be as close together in the novel as they were in the script, right? Just because of like you're compressing time like crazy in visual mediums, right? So like there were some things where I was like, okay, well this has to come like way before it actually is in the show. So I think which I think lost some of the like poignancy of that event, but I'm thinking of one in particular. So I think like controlling time is a little bit tougher in the novel space because you kind of have to stay somewhat linear. You can't really jump around too much.
I would think two things that I would question. I think as I'm writing, I have found frustration because I will think, oh, I think this would be so much easier if it was a movie because, and the two times that I've felt that way are for omniscient foreshadowing, when the film can show something that a character doesn't notice, but you have the dramatic irony that the audience knows that something else is happening. That when you're locked into a POV as an author, you don't have that same kind of leniency. That has made me angry. And then subtle changes that wouldn't necessarily sound creepy, but if you see it, it's something that hits you a lot harder. So if you have a shadow that's suddenly moving not the way that the shadow is supposed to move, or if you have a river and the current suddenly shifts and part of the river's current is going the opposite direction, when you write that, it's not very dramatic. It doesn't sound very creepy, but there's like an innate thing in your brain that kind of tweaks when you see unnatural things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think visual media is fascinating, but
yeah, it's a different monster for sure. I mean, they're very closely related, but there's a lot of stuff that I think that I took for granted from screenwriting that like when I went to novel write, I was like, oh my God, this is way harder than I expected it to be. Cause you get kind of in this habit where, and the same is true going from like the screenplay to actual production, right? And there's just a lot of moving parts to it. So I think that it's important to just like make sure you're like up to speed on what medium you're writing for, and like take the time to process that information properly, and to do the world building and development that is required for the medium you're writing in. I don't think people need to world build as crazily as I do for most books, right? Like, they don't need to be able to do a dissertation on astrophysics and orbital combat vectoring, right? Like, probably not, right? Unless you're writing like some like really like hardcore mill sci-fi, which is great. If you are, awesome, do it. But then you're probably not going to be like doing 100 question character dossier on every single character that appears, that has a name in your novel, right? So, I think that it's important to know what you need for what you're doing. Like, you can get world builder syndrome, right? Where you just get stuck world building because it's fun and you never actually write your story. So I think that's a trap you can get into. I have a process that is very strict and very rigid that I adhere to for my world building to keep me from just world building all day. Because, that's really what I love to do, is I love to build worlds. So, I have things very laid out, and once I'm done with those things, development's done, and I'm putting rubber to road on whatever the thing is, whether it's a script or a novel.
You want to be an escapist in your own world.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is a very common thread, and for those of you who have listened or seen any of these episodes previously, like, everybody has said something similar. We all, when we write, we want to be escapists in our own world building, but we have to avoid that temptation, because otherwise then you miss the point, which is producing the product.
Right. Exactly.
So, finally remembered what I was going to ask you about, and remembered what that reference was. You have a couple of swords in the background there, but right next to it is is that a D12?
It's
giant dice?
Giant D12, yeah.
And
D&D books right here.
Yeah, and
Those
the
are all
D&D books right next to it. You had mentioned D&D. And if we won't delve too deep into it, because if you're a big D&D nerd like Oz and I, we were going to do an episode a little bit on that.
Yeah.
I got my start in writing because of D&D. Where was creative juice from D&D?
Yep. I've been a DM for 30 years. There was one group that played D&D in my hometown, and we weren't cool enough to get invited to that group. So I was like, you know what? I've got $20. I'm going to go buy the campaign setting, and I'll figure out how to tell stories and make it happen. And that's what I did. And I've been the DM for my group forever. We play still to this day, and they love it. So I literally got addicted to telling stories by playing D&D.
Because of spite. There's a theme.
But
I'm
also
noticing the trend.
spite. Yeah, don't piss me off, because I will find a way to turn story against you.
Which is another lesson. If people aren't helping you out, do it out of...
Right. Like, I just don't like to be told no, I think, is what the problem is. So, like, you tell me no, like, I'm going to go do it myself anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a good habit to have, to be honest. Unless you're in the military, turns out.
Yeah. Probably a good thing I didn't do that then.
Ask me how I know. No, it's so the other thing I had thought of was, we have you here. We can talk film and TV and stuff. And I don't want to get too off script from world building, but you had talked about the kind of escapist, and we've mentioned it a couple times, the escapism of going into film. You don't want your characters to be too real. The thing I thought of was, I watched The Bear. I don't know if you've watched that yet on Hulu. Yeah. That I have never had a show give me anxiety quite like The Bear.
Yeah.
Like I feel him.
It was too real though. Yeah. Like everybody walked out of that. Everybody walks away from that movie stressed out. There's no catharsis for you. You just walk away going, "Oh my God, I'm stressed." Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then the series on Hulu is just taking it and dialed it up, and you're just like, I feel like Gordon Ramsay's yelling at me now. But
yeah.
No, but I do enjoy some of that realism sometimes. Like, I can't take it for very long periods at a time. Like, I have to divide up those seasons a little bit, but and then you go and watch some other things. But how do you really, what do you look for when you go to enjoy somebody else's world building?
Good character, good dialogue. I'm a sucker for good dialogue. Like, I'll forgive plot holes. I'll forgive, flat characters. If the dialogue is good and witty and fun, then I'm there for it. That's why it's something like a Firefly I love so much, is because like the world's good, the characters are good, and the dialogue's good. It's so well written. So, when I go to consume something, I really look for dialogue first. Like, I really want characters to have unique voice. I really want them to have real interaction and banter, right? Like, we talk a certain way to people that we know, right? We don't even have to be really close friends. Like, we know each other, we're going to talk a certain way. And so I really look for that. Like, if everybody is like, oh yes, hail and well met, Shady, like, it's just like, okay, all right, oh God, like it wouldn't. The term I use a lot is like, don't give me wooden characters and wooden dialogue. Like, I want something to have some life to it. And I want it to feel real. So, that's probably the thing I primarily look for. Obviously I look for good world building. I look for good characterization. Plot's probably the last thing I look for. Like, if the characters are good, dialogue's good, and the world's cool, like, I'm there for it. Like John Wick, the plot's actually like kind of weak. Like, I'm not sure if the plot changed from the first movie. I don't even know if there is a plot for the subsequent movies. He's just still pissed off about his dog, right? So, it's like, which is fine, because everything else is firing on all cylinders. So it's like, I don't care there's no plot, because everything else is great.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, John Wick, definitely one of those that, like, I enjoy. Like, the plot is weak, like, it's there enough that I'm like, cool, great. But it's all of the extra stuff that makes that movie.
Right. And it's Keanu being Keanu. It's like,
yeah,
go, man. Go hard.
Did you watch Bullet Train?
I haven't yet, no.
Oh my gosh.
That like, it is in
It's
the vein
wonderful.
of Smoking Aces.
Oh,
right? Like,
okay, nice.
That's the kind of pacing it has, and I love it. And Brad Pitt as a character actor, probably one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So 2 questions left, because we don't want to eat up too much of your time, and we'll have you back on at some point.
Yeah, it's been a long night.
We could just switch to a movie podcast, movie and film podcast, and start talking about. No, we'll. What is your favorite series? Like, what writing, or novels, or TV, or movies? Like, where do you draw inspiration from?
Oh gosh. So I grew up reading. I grew up reading sci-fi and fantasy. My dad was a huge sci-fi and fantasy fan, so like, I've read just about everything sci-fi and fantasy that's out there. And obviously, like, I love, like, your major epics, like the Lord of the Rings, the Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, Ted Williams' Dragonbone Chair, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Chronicles of Thomas Covenant Unbeliever. I think that's one of the, like, best, like, character stories, because you hate the character. You hate the character through the whole series. You hate him, but he's trying everything he can to redeem himself in your eyes, and it's never going to happen, but we read it anyway, right? So, Dune, like, there's so many good stories out there that have been such an inspiration to me. My current favorite is Red Rising series. Pierce Brown. I find the character. I've never been more pissed off reading a series, reading a book, than I was reading a particular chapter in his books, where something happens that you think something has happened, and he leads you to believe something's happened. And I was not okay with his decision to do what he was suggesting he did, and I chucked that book across the room with like 25 pages left to go. And I was like, I'm never picking that book up again. Screw this guy. Like, he's just messing with me. It's not fair. I loved it until that. I'm done. Right. And I was encouraged. It took several days. I think it took a couple weeks, actually, of encouragement for me to like pick the book back up, only to find out that, what I had read wasn't exactly what I had read. And I thought it was a brilliant thing, but what it made me realize is that I loved the characters. I was absolutely head over heels in love with those characters, and the fact that something that I didn't agree with happened to one of the characters pissed me off to the point where I like resorted to physical violence against the book and threw it against the wall. I may have even kicked it. I think I kicked it too.
Next time, please record.
Upset. Yeah. So yes, I'd say that's probably the top of my charts right now. Which is funny because I was getting ready to publish. I had written Revolution and was getting ready to publish it when somebody told me, "It's like, oh, you're writing about a Martian revolution. You should read Red Rising. It's about a Martian revolution." And I was like, I swear to God, if I just finish this book and there's another book that's just like it out, I'm gonna kill myself. This is gonna be over. Like, I'm done. I just worked my butt off doing this, and like I just can't take it. So I read it to make sure that it was different. And it was very different, but still, like, so it started off an emotional roller coaster for me. Let's just put it that way. But I fell in love with it. So
cool. All right, and the question that everybody is going to want us to have answered, because unlike you, most of us don't start in the film industry and then become authors. We became authors first, and we're looking for that TV deal. What advice do you have for people trying to turn their ideas into screenplays, right? Turn their novels into screenplays.
So a couple things to remember. One, always remember that money flows to the property holder, right? To the property creator. There's a lot of people out there that will try to take your money for you to try to get you doors opened or whatever. Don't do it. Money should always flow to you. It's your property, and people should be buying it from you to make it happen. That being said, there are lots of ways to work with people who can adapt a pilot for you or a feature film for you, and kind of start that process for you. Starting a pitch deck, like if you want to do this, you're going to have to pitch it. I mean, unless you blow up and like, you have millions of, you become Harry Potter, then they're going to come to you, and great, right on. But for most properties, it's about getting in front of producers. And like most producers I know don't have time to read. So like they need to be made familiar of your work by either you sharing with them or someone else sharing with them. So like having a pitch deck ready, having a one sheet ready, because you never know when you're going to, I was just at a convention and wound up pitching a producer while I was there. Like they just, found out that we were a couple hours apart. They were like, hey, I'll drive in and meet you. We'll take a meeting. We'll have a general. And it went really well. I was just, because I've got all of my decks and pitch, information on my phone. So it's just here we go. This is the pitch and whatever. So like having your pitch nailed down, having a one sheet with all the like your information, so that if somebody says, yeah, hey, send me some information on it, you don't have to send them a huge book. They don't, they probably not going to read the book if you send it. They probably won't even read the script if you send it, if you've already had it adapted. But what they will do is they'll take a look at a sheet and see if it's a genre that they're interested in and a budget range that they like, and that it's a topic that is topical and trending, right? So, I think that just being prepared and then having the right tools in a toolbox accessible is important. I think that's step one. But then, if you're really serious about it, finding and acquiring an agent, finding and acquiring an entertainment attorney, a manager, somebody who can open up doors for you. It really kind of depends on where your property's at. If you have 5,000 reviews on Amazon and it's over 4 stars, and that's going to be a pretty easy sell to an agent. If you've just published and you have 10, that's going to be much harder, if it's your first book. So I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just there might be a better strategy than just like sending query letters to agents.
Cool. James Fox, we would love to keep talking to you, but we have taken enough of your time for tonight. And we will definitely probably hit you back up. We both like to hang out with you. You're just an awesome person to be around. But the other part being, it's like, it's so much fun to talk to you because you have such a unique view on both worlds, right? So it is super helpful to everybody. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Is there any parting words that you want to leave on world building for the audience?
I mean, I'm going to say the same thing I say in Ink and Effort. Put your butt in the chair and write. If you want to be a writer, start pounding keys. Close this, like it, subscribe to it, do all of those things, and then start writing.
Listen to podcasts while you're driving and doing your dishes.
Yeah.
Write the other times.
There you go. When your hands are busy, listen to podcasts. When your hands aren't busy, write.
Bingo.
But cool. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
As always, to everybody listening, thank you again for coming and supporting both Worlds of Asunder and Ink and Effort. Hopefully these won't be too far apart, but we're going to make a bunch of references, and it'll be fun to find out like how far apart they end up being and seeing who catches on to when we were talking about different things. But
Easter eggs.
James, I know you've got a couple of projects in the works, right? Currently.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a brief discussion on where they can find you? And we'll include links as always.
Yeah, sure. I've got a solo link that's got all my stuff. You can visit my website at thejamesfox.com, and that kind of will give you a link to my whole universe and Amazon and all that good stuff. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook pretty regularly. So if you want to know like very up to date information, joining my newsletter is the best route, because I do all of that once and then I forget to put it on social media until like a month or two later. Then I'm usually talking to somebody and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you." And I was like, "Oh, well, you didn't sign up for my newsletter. I'll put it out on social media." So, but yeah, I'm pretty active on both platforms. So like if people want to reach out and ask me additional questions or whatever, I'm pretty responsive. So yeah, and all of those links can be found on either my website or I've got a solo site that I can send you links at all over the place.
And we'll include it in the show notes, which I almost always talk about in the ending. But and you've also got 2 upcoming director credits, I see.
Yeah, I'm directing 2 films beginning of next year, so probably January, and then later on in that year as well. So I'm a little bit limited as to what I can talk about there, but one is called Quarantine Island and the other is called Flesh Off the Grill, 2 horror films. They will be my horror debuts, which I'm really excited about, and they're epic, man. The writer, Gary Dover, is just incredible. The team is incredible. Who we have interested in the project is incredible. I mean, it's coming together in a way that I had never imagined, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be super fun.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, yeah. So good luck to you in the future year here. It sounds like it's going to be real exciting for you, and we're excited for you. Look him up on IMDb closely if you want to go see anything that he's done in the past, for sure. That's honestly how I found out some of the stuff he's been attached to. So, yeah, thanks for stopping by, James. It was good to have you. Appreciate you. And we'll catch you guys next time. Don't run off just quite yet to go create those pitch decks. I know you're all itching to create and send off to Hollywood. We talked a little bit about characters this week, and I know some of you are probably wondering, when are we going to get to those? Don't worry, we've got plans. Just trying to get it to work out. Thanks again to James Fox for stopping by, and thank you to Nick Thacker for hosting this podcast. Make sure you go check out James's podcast, Ink and Effort. He's on a bit of a hiatus, but it will come back for season 2, so check it out. Make sure to follow us on our show notes, where we have all of our links. Next week, tune in to catch the Maimed Historian. That's Steve Ruskin, part 1. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment to wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, thanks for helping us tear the worlds asunder. We'll see you next time.